We have never seen an NBA playoff run like the one that the Indiana Pacers, and more in particular Tyrese Haliburton, just had. Now, yes, there have been Cinderella runs in the past, and even very recently with the Miami Heat in both 2021 and 2023, but none of these teams had quite the playoff experience that Tyrese Haliburton and the Pacers had this season. Haliburton by himself hit 4 game-winning shots in one singular playoff run and had people convinced that the Pacers were actively practicing dark magic. That's how good they were this season. And you could definitely make the argument that this Pacers team was an Achilles tear away from winning the NBA championship. This was without a doubt one of the more entertaining NBA Finals series of the recent few years. I mean, it was the first Game 7 since 2016, and it felt like the two teams were kind of evenly matched, although coming into the playoffs, it was vastly different. Indiana was the 5th best odds to come out of the Eastern Conference. Boston was 1, Cleveland was 2, then probably the Knicks, and then Bucks, and then the Pacers, all the way down at 5, and they destroyed the Bucks in the first round. Had a Tyrese Haliburton buzzer beater and had a massive comeback. They destroyed the Cavs in round 2, and once again had a Tyrese Haliburton buzzer beater and a dramatic late game comeback. Deja vu in the 3rd round in the Eastern Conference Finals. It just felt like destiny, and it was to the point where people were saying, the Pacers are practicing witchcraft. The Pacers are practicing dark magic. Now, obviously, that was satire, but that's what it felt like because no lead was safe. I mean, up 14 points with like 2 minutes left and they come back. That's ridiculous. Nobody does that. The Pacers became the only team to ever win a game trailing by double figures with 2 minutes and 15 seconds or less to go in the game, which they did in Game 1 in the Garden. And the craziest stat maybe I've ever seen is the teams who are down by 7 or more points in the final minute of overtime or regulation are a combined 4 and 1,360. The Pacers this season had 3 of those 4 wins. Ridiculous. 75% of those types of wins in NBA history were brought to us by this year's Indiana Pacers. But to really do this team justice, we got to go back and look at the rebuild because it was a fantastic job done by the Pacers front office, understanding that the way the NBA was going was you don't need a top-tier megastar to be able to win games. You just have to have a couple of stars surrounded by a ton of depth, and you're going to be very competent and competitive year after year. Henceforth, the back-to-back Eastern Conference Finals appearances and, of course, being a game away from an NBA championship this season. We go all the way back to the 2021-22 season where the Pacers, who are led by Tyrese Haliburton, who got traded in the now infamous essentially Domantas Sabonis for Tyrese Haliburton swap. There were some other pieces in there like Buddy Hield, but this is a Pacers team that won 25 games. Keep in mind, this is 4 years ago. They went 25-57. Rick Carlisle was the coach. They had obviously Miles Turner. The GOAT TJ McConnell was on the squad, Isaiah Jackson. But other than that, it was just those 4 that are still currently on the team just 4 years ago. Kevin Pritchard started cooking that offseason, however, as he sends Malcolm Brogdon to the Boston Celtics, and in exchange gets a guy by the name of Aaron Nesmith, as well as a couple of other role players, and a 2023 first-round pick, and that helps bring in their point-of-attack defender in Nesmith, and also an elite three-point shooter, as we saw in Game 1 of the Eastern Conference Finals. Then, further into the offseason, in the NBA draft, they go out and spend the 6th overall pick on a guy named Bennedict Mathurin out of Arizona University, and then later, with the first pick of the 2nd round, go out and get Andrew Nembhard, a fantastic value selection there, as they're able to get a guy with one of the deepest bags in the league for a bench player, although he did start towards the end of the year, and a fantastic two-way guy, as well as Ben Mathurin, who also has one of the deeper bags in the league for a bench player, guys that can go out and create for themselves and come in and be self-sufficient pieces to the offense off the bench. And they got them both in the same draft, as well as Nesmith in that offseason to pair up with Miles Turner, Tyrese Haliburton, and the rest of the core that they were starting to develop. The Pacers would go 35-47 in the 2022-2023 season, and then, Pritchard would be cooking even more in the following offseason, going out and trading 2 second-round picks for Obi Toppin, selects Jarace Walker 7th overall, which was kind of a mass selection, and then he brings in Bruce Brown, and then at the deadline, when he sees, all right, we're competitive, he goes out and ships off Bruce Brown and a couple of other assets in exchange for Pascal Siakam, and Siakam is one of the more underrated players in the league today. A huge reason why the Pacers were able to go on the run that they did this season. He was their engine. Now, Haliburton was their engine, but Pascal was the guy, their go-to scorer, their initiator on the offensive end of the court. And then you know the story from there. They upset the Milwaukee Bucks for the first time in the first round, and they upset the New York Knicks for the first time in the second round, and then take on the Boston Celtics, where they do get swept. But it was a very, very close series. It took a Jaylen Brown buzzer beater and a couple of other very tightly contested games for the Pacers to go out. So it was much, much different than a sweep. It was a competitive series, and the Celtics realized this, and they knew that the following season the Pacers would be a problem. They just didn't know quite how much of a problem Indiana would be. That, of course, set the scene for this year's historic run, and I don't think people understand just how deep this Pacers team was. Yes, they had Pascal and Tyrese Haliburton, but Pascal only averaged 20.5 points per game in this playoff run, and Tyrese only averaged about 18.5. They were 0.1 Obi Toppin points away from having 8 guys averaging double figures throughout this playoff run, and that just speaks volume to how perfectly constructed this team is under Kevin Pritchard, because you have guys off the bench like Ben Mathurin who can come in and take over a finals game and drop 27 points and help lead you to victory. And then you've also got guys like Obi Toppin who are an instant spark to any offense. You've got Aaron Nesmith, who's like your 5th option in the starting lineup. They can go for 8 threes on any given night, and Andrew Nembhard, who is a really good two-way player, will give you the loudest 8 points you've ever seen in your life and is going to hit big-time clutch shots in the NBA Finals. And that's not to downplay the role that Haliburton and Pascal had on this team. They were the clear top 2 dogs. Like I said, Tyrese was the engine for everything. He was the conductor. He ran the offense. But Pascal averaged 20.5 points in the NBA playoffs. Did that on a very efficient 52% shooting from the field and 43% from 3. And if the dude could make a free throw, it felt like he'd be averaging about 25 a game. Haliburton chipped in with about 17 points, 9 assists, and 5 rebounds a night, give or take. And, if you ever needed a clutch bucket, that was the guy to go to. I've never seen a run like he had in this year's playoffs, and that's kind of the whole point of the video. First the Milwaukee series, that crazy comeback, then the Cleveland series, hitting game winners, and the blowout later in that series. Of course, you've got the New York, the iconic game 1, even though his foot was on the line, a ridiculous shot, just shot after shot after shot. Of course, game 1 in the NBA Finals. It was a ridiculous run, and I don't know if I've ever seen anything like that again watching the NBA. 4 game-winning buzzer beaters throughout the course of a singular playoff run is unheard of. And like I said, I don't know if it'll ever be replicated, and we'll see what the Pacers do from here, because of course Miles Turner is shipped off to Milwaukee, or not shipped off, he went and signed with Milwaukee because the Pacers were too cheap to pay him. Tyrese Haliburton's out for the year, so that's 2 of your starters gone. It'll be an interesting rebuilding process, but I do like Cam Jones. I think he's a fantastic rookie, and I like some of the moves they made this offseason. But with that being said, that's going to be it for today's video. Thanks so much for watching. If you did enjoy, make sure to hit the like button, leave me a comment down below, and hit that subscribe button. It'll really help us out in the YouTube algorithm. And with all that being said, thank you so much for watching today's video.